Welcome to the This Is Not What I Signed Up For podcast. This is a series of podcasts aimed at new managers, supervisors, and team leads, giving you bite-sized takeaways that you can take in a short space of time. Check out the book of the same title on thisisnotwhatisignedupfor.com or over on Amazon. If this sounds like it's for you, then this is the podcast you signed up for. Let's get our feet wet and learn to swim with today's episode. Hello and welcome to This Is Not What I Signed Up For, the podcast for new managers teaching you how to swim so that you don't sink with your new responsibilities. And today I am very happy to have David Goldberg with me. David is the CEO of Edge Studio, which is a voiceover recording and training company in Times Square, New York. And David helps people build trust with strategic words, speaking patterns, and presence. And his techniques are used by over 10,000 CEOs, politicians, podcasters, entrepreneurs. That's amazing, David. That's very, very cool. And I met David recently, and he was just so kind and generous with his time and his words and chatting to us. And I'm very excited to have him on the podcast so he can share that warmth with you as well. So, David, welcome.
Ross, thank you so much for taking the time to bring me into your podcast.
I'm so glad to have you. So today we are going to be talking about trust and influence, but from your voice, which I think is going to be really, really cool to get into for the folks that have just got into management and things like that, and finding out how your voice can influence the trust or influence you, your trust, your influence, and so on in the workplace. So, David, I'm going to jump right in. How does your voice relate to trust and influence?
It doesn't just relate, it is trust and influence. It really is. Human voice, our voice, is the most direct connection we have to our listener. Without question, this has been studied and researched, and oh my goodness. It's such an important aspect of who we are, how we communicate, how we influence others, how we establish trust out there with colleagues, with customers. Yet the irony, the thing that really cracks me up is that it makes me ponder, I should say, is that it's not really taught. I look at my own kids in grade school, and they're not taught how to use their voices. They're told to give oral presentations in school in front of all the parents, and they're frightened because they've never been taught how to do that. And so most of us go through this world and never take a coaching session on how to speak differently or better.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, lots of people don't come across as brilliantly as they are. Lots of people don't get promoted as they should. Lots of people are held back for a whole myriad of reasons because they haven't learned some techniques that can help them really do well in this world, in the job and off the job, in life, and I guess I would say in life and in the workplace. Once you learn a couple of key skills, it is amazing how much more successful you can be.
You've made me think back to when I was in school as well, and speaking aside from the odd presentation in front of the class was a separate extramural that you had to sign up for, and you had to really want to do it separately, and it was like part of the debate team kind of thing. And I think that was one of the best things I could have done in school was going through SA Guild speaking, which is what I did. It really does. You've made me think just with what you're explaining there, how I've seen it kind of play out in the workplace for myself, and seeing people who've got that command of it and how it works for them. How do you see it with the folks that you've dealt with and all that? How do you see all of this playing out in the workplace? You've mentioned a bit of it now, but what are some of the situations that play out?
Every situation plays out, honestly. People have all different kinds of speaking habits they've picked up along the way. Sometimes they're due to just culture, demographics, language, their parents, the way they were brought up. Sometimes it is due to just I don't know, just the way they feel that they should be, the way they feel they should communicate. They want to be like their friends. People speak all different ways for all different reasons. And most people don't recognize the fact that they could go further once they learn these skills. I think the telltale sign is that when people listen back to themselves in a speaking situation, like for example, if someone gives a keynote speech or a toast at a wedding and they watch the video back, probably 99 out of 100 times they'll watch that video back and say, "Ooh, oh, I didn't realize how fast I was speaking. Oh, I didn't realize how slowly I was speaking. Oh, I didn't realize how choppy I sounded. I didn't realize this. I didn't realize that." And unless you have that opportunity, most people never recognize the fact that they're being held back.
Mm, that's interesting. And in that kind of situation, do you encourage people to watch themselves speak, to kind of learn those kind of things, get that awareness?
Yes, sometimes no. Like, if you don't know what to listen for, then listening to something that may not be the best speaking pattern can do worse for you because you'll be,
Mm.
like engraving that lesser quality speaking pattern into your brain. So if you know what to listen for, if you know how to make adjustments that are tailored for you, then it can be great.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's also a lot of it comes down to understanding your ability, how far your voice can go. We
Mm.
all can't sound uh, as good as the person we may aspire to sound like. Maybe I can't sound like Morgan Freeman. My voice is not deep enough. I don't have that gravitas, and I could look around and say, "Oh, I wish I spoke like that person," or "Oh, I wish I spoke like this person." We all have our DNA to some degree, our abilities. Um, I was born hearing impaired, and I was an extremely delayed speaker, and I have my limitations. I'm very conscious of the way I speak. I know already 3 or 4 times in our 3 minutes together, I've had a fumble for a word. That happens to me, and it took me years to accept the fact. And I can't sit there all day long and think, "Oh, I wish that didn't happen," because I would never get anywhere in this world. We all have to understand the limitations of our voice, how much we can grow with our voice, and understand how to tailor our own voice for the different situations that we face in life. Once you do that, then you can listen back to yourself and learn.
Mm. That's interesting. Um, I think something I've learned recently as well is also kind of accepting some of the things in my speech and all of that. I think I feel like almost my brain gets ahead of my mouth.
Mhm.
Then end up stumbling and tripping over my words as well.
Yeah, and it's funny. A lot of people have a concern about speaking publicly for a variety of different reasons. And like I said, for me, it's fumbling for that word, it's forgetting the next word. It does happen, and it's something that if you can accept, then you can be much more comfortable on stage or in a boardroom meeting. I will tell you that there is a large percentage of the population who will not speak up when they have something to say. And once again, relating back to your first question, those people are held back in business, in the business world, and probably in their personal lives as well, because they don't speak up for fear of saying the wrong word or coming across incorrectly. That is a shame.
Mm. And I think that kind of ties into one of the questions I wanted to ask you as well. And bringing around your voice affecting your performance, and you were mentioning now like people might not want to raise their voice or something like that. Are there other ways that it affects your performance? I'm thinking like performance in a work environment where you've got KPIs that measures your performance on paper, that you completed these tasks, therefore you are performing at 100%. Um, how does your voice come into that? Because there must be some sort of effect there as well.
Yeah, it's hard to measure. So if you look at KPIs, they're great. They definitely have this place in the world. We use them in my business. You can look at someone's metrics and did they reach a target, and in timeline, did they reach a dollar amount, a percentage of whatever. That's all great. And there's certainly merit to looking at those numbers and studying them and understanding someone's ability and how well they've done with the business. But as I said earlier, the direction, rather the connection that we can create through human voice is so strong, yet it's hard to measure. So if you use your voice really well, if you connect with people, are you effectively a better leader? I would argue yes.
Mm.
And so if you can lead teams better, well, then the company may be more successful. But how do you measure that? By the way you speak, right? How, on a scale of 1 to 10, do people like following you as a leader? I mean, that's not an exact KPI. It's very subjective. Do you build credibility better for you or for your team? Do you represent your company better because you speak better, or you tell, or those under you kind of follow your lead and use your words, and now they also represent the company better? There,
Mm.
everything comes along with how you speak. It's all about connecting, making that relationship. Truly, it's all about building trust. And so for
Yeah.
all of these years, I've studied voice and the nuances of voice. And what does it mean when someone speaks poorly versus someone who speaks clearly, comfortably, confidently, competently? And when you speak well, you establish that trust. You make amazing first impressions. You make people more receptive to your messages, which means you are a better leader,
Mm.
and you influence those around you. You can really influence, and especially it's great if you want to influence customers, right? So
Yeah.
even in that sense, like what customer would buy from a company or a representative if they don't believe in that or trust that representative? And
Yeah.
so these metrics that we look at with KPIs are great, but with human voice, they're not. There's not a KPI. However, I would argue that it is equally or even more important to use your voice well.
Mm. I think what you've mentioned there is just so many opportunities that come from building your voice and that trust and influence, just in sort of that listing that you gave now. Um, when it comes to these skills, then are there some tips that you can give here, or anything like that, on how folks would start to build these skills? Like, say someone is very much feeling this, like, oh, that's me, not kind of making that. What is it? Where would someone start? What's some of the tips to build?
I'm quickly putting together an entire curriculum and now organizing it and trying to think what to say. Okay, I would say the number one thing, two things, two overall points I should communicate. Number one, there is no one right way to do anything. There are so
Mm.
many different situations and platforms and audiences who we can speak with. So when assessing how you should speak, you need to look at the demographic. Number one, right? What matching their voice, mirroring their energy, and all of that stuff is important. Number two, understand the platform in which you're speaking on. This is Zoom. The microphone is 3 inches from my mouth. You lots of listeners have headphones on. I'm not sure if you're wearing headphones, but lots of people have headphones on, which means if essentially I'm 3 inches from someone's ears.
Mm.
I don't need to yell. Now, if
Yeah.
I was on stage with a room of 300 people with no microphone, I would need to project. And if I projected that way right now, it would sound really bad. So
I
time and
would
place
I
for
would
everything. So
know very
understanding,
clearly.
yeah, yeah. So just understanding the platform, whether you're video conferencing, on mic, on stage, online, in person, in a boardroom, at a conference center, which is quiet, or in a conference center, which is loud. Understanding how to use your voice differently in all of those applications is important. Thirdly, I would say understanding the message, the situation, or the reason why you're speaking, something powerful, something where you want to influence, something where you want to just inform. So the number one answer to your question is to know that there's not one right way to do anything. You're always looking at your demographic, your platform, and the situation why you are speaking.
Mm.
The second thing to know is that I believe you cannot look at vague, general techniques in this industry to learn how to do things. You need to have adjustments that work for your voice.
Mm.
In other words, just about every I don't mean to put anyone down, but most public speakers or speaking coaches, podcast schools, CEO schools, leadership schools, all of these places tend to talk a lot about, they all say that, well, I'm going to say this differently. They promote that they teach you how to speak. They tell you, we'll get you speaking like a CEO, or we'll get you speaking like a podcaster, but they tend to use these very general, vague guidelines. For example, they may say, make sure when you speak publicly, you don't go too fast. I never tell people not to go too fast. I think that's meaningless. I tell people how to slow down. There
Mm.
are 2 or 3 or 4 different kinds of techniques that are all simple, super simple, and they work really effectively at helping someone slow down. So instead of telling someone to slow down or don't go too fast, I tell people how to do those things. And so I have, without exaggeration, there must be thousands of little techniques that I've built up over the years that just work. And everyone I coach gets a different set of adjustments to make based upon their voice and the platform where they are and the situation while they're speaking and so on.
Mm. That's
I'll give you an
fascinating.
example,
Yeah.
and it's a fun one. And when you and I met the first time, I did mention this. I'm quite sure I did, but for your listeners, it's the epitome of what I do. I have a client in Washington D.C. She runs a consulting agency. Her and a partner, they run a consulting agency. They help CEOs of large nonprofits, very large nonprofits, do their thing. And she's brilliant. She called me up recently and said, "David, I need you to speak to the chairman for this particular nonprofit. He is giving an investor pitch. It's a 3-minute timed investor pitch, of which he'll have three investors on and 200 of the employees at this nonprofit all on this webinar. He's nervous because he feels he has way more than 3 minutes of content to get through in 3 minutes. He has to get through this content. So he's nervous that he's going to speak too quickly. And then he's nervous because he's going to sound nervous. Like he knows he's going to have to speak quickly, which makes him nervous, and therefore he's
Mm.
nervous about sounding nervous." And she said, "Can you help him?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. Do what you always do. Just send an introduction email. I can, speak with him and give him a coaching session or two." And she said, "No, no, I can't introduce you by email. The investor pitch is tonight." I said, "Okay, so can you put him on the phone? I'll speak with him for a couple of minutes and, give him some suggestions." And she said, "No, no, no. The investor pitch is like momentarily from now. Like it's happening in a few minutes. Just tell me what to tell him." So I said, "Okay, tell him to do 2 things." I said, "Tell him to slow down the first word of every sentence, to stretch or elongate the first word of every sentence." And I said, "Tell him to also double the amount of space between sentences." And
Mm.
anyway, she communicated those 2 things to to the chairman. He did those 2 things. Evidently, everything went great. They called me the next day and said, like, "Unbelievable. Those 2 things saved the day." And so I'll tell you and the viewers why I prescribed those 2 adjustments. Number 1, if someone has a lot of information, they're going to rush.
Mm.
And the moment they rush, they're going to elevate their pitch. When you elevate your pitch, you sound like you're nervous. And so by telling someone to lower their pitch, they will no longer sound nervous. But I don't know, does this guy know anything about pitch? I don't know. He may understand what pitch is, he may not.
Mm.
Yet if I tell him to slow down the first word of every sentence, that's easy. Anyone can understand what that means. And when you slow down a word, you also subconsciously, unknowingly, you lower your pitch. So
Mm.
I wanted this guy to make sure I want to make sure he doesn't sound nervous. That's my number one thing. Because no investor will invest in him if they think he is nervous. You need someone who's
Yeah.
comfortable, confident, can handle themselves in crisis. If he can't even get through an investor pitch, how can he handle a whole company?
Mm.
So I tell him to slow down the first word of every sentence, and that lowers the pitch. And now, like I said, while he may still be nervous, he won't sound nervous. And then the reason I told him to take double the space between sentences is kind of weird because it sounds counterproductive. Like he has so much content to get through. Why would I tell him to take more time? However, by taking a break in between sentences, it means that he can always catch his breath.
Mm.
He can think about the next word. He can avoid getting tongue tied, speaking in circles, whatever. He can get through the content much more clearly. And so I think ultimately he'll get through more content in less time. And because he takes breaks, the audience, the investors, can follow along with what he's saying. They will have time to take it in.
Mm.
In other words, a lot of people who are feeling the necessity to get through a lot of content, they go from sentence 1 into sentence 2, then into sentence 3, then into sentence 4, and the audience cannot keep up with that. And once the
Yeah.
audience is confused, once you confuse your listener, they check out. They're gone. They're off to solitaire, So it's little things like that, and that's what I do all day. I work with CEOs and lots of politicians, a whole lot of politicians, These days, almost as many politicians as CEOs, and CEOs are where I kind of cut my teeth there for a while. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of startups,
Mm,
and just helping them figure out how to give the elevator pitch, how to give
yeah.
a boardroom meeting, how to sit on a speaking seminar, and I've really focused a lot also on a whole lot on presence. I'm down to like the way they point their feet when they walk out on stage, the angle that they sit at, don't all kinds of things, their posture, that just everything that goes into it. You know what? I think, Ross, it comes down to a lot of about attention to detail.
Mm,
Most of us are unconcerned about so many things that our audience takes in unconsciously. And so
yeah.
we're not concerned with things that they are taking in. So if you sit there with your legs spread in a weird way, you kind of walk out slouching, you rush your first word, whatever it is, you may not even be thinking, oh, should I do this on the first word or not? But your audience consciously or subconsciously takes all that stuff in.
Mm,
And when you rush through that stuff, it shows a lack of attention to detail. And that's the way you weaken your image. You lose the trust in the audience. And my whole thing is, let's build trust. For politicians, you build trust so people vote for you. For CEOs, you build trust so people follow you. You influence others. And for startups, so they get investment. And that's the whole goal of what I do.
yeah. I'm in the startup space quite a bit, and I must say that the amount of speaking that happens in the startup space is astounding.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
For podcasts and uh, investor pitches, customer presentations. I mean, there's just so many applications
oh yeah.
to be able. In today's world, there are constantly more and more applications in which you can speak, and any investor, rather any entrepreneur out there, should be completely comfortable going into into any situation and knowing how to speak in that given situation.
Mm,
That's
yeah, and
just
I
being
think
prepared.
yeah, and I think that filters down to kind of every level. And I think the sooner you can learn this kind of stuff, the better. Um, wow, this has been fantastic, David. Can you give folks a little tip about, or a little bit about what you're busy with at the moment and where people could reach you if they want to learn more about this?
Yeah, I am busy at the moment. I'm too busy to answer that question. No, I'm kidding. So I own well, you said it earlier. I own a
Mm,
voice recording company. For 38 years, we just hit 38 years, which is amazing.
wow, congrats.
And we're based in Times Square. We have a whole floor in Times Square. If anyone is in New York City, feel welcome to stop by. It's a very cool place. My teams are amazing. I have one employee at 22 years, another employee at 19 years. I have a lot of employees who've been there 10, 11, 12 years. This is my family, that their team, they're amazing. So we record all sorts of voice, and we do everything with voice, truly. We record
Mm,
podcasts, we record commercials, animations, documentaries, audiobooks. Anytime you hear a recording of voice, that is what we work on. The soundtrack for video games and cartoons and all sorts of things. So
that's so
that
cool.
keeps me extremely busy. What else keeps me busy is just working my sort of like I've never stepped away from my company, but it runs great. And like I said, my teams are great. And I spend most of my day working with CEOs and politicians.
Mm,
And so if anyone wants to get in touch with me, my email is david@edgestudio.com. I'll repeat that, david@edgestudio.com.
wonderful. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes for this as well. So folks will have that over there and a link to the website as well. I think you've given me a few things that I'm already making like internal notes. I'm speaking at an event on Thursdays. Okay, maybe I should think about slowing down the first words and watch my pitch when I walk out on stage.
May I share one last thing really quickly?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
thing that concerns most people about speaking publicly is the fear of something going wrong.
Mm,
That makes sense, right? Your fear,
yeah,
like, if you
yeah.
had complete confidence that nothing would go wrong, then you probably wouldn't be concerned about speaking publicly. Most people are concerned about something going wrong. And what I would share with anyone is that any fear you have, think of a reason to get around it. So it no longer needs to be a fear. And I'll give you a couple of very quick examples. I worked with someone last week or possibly 2 weeks ago. She told me that she has a whole, like she's going on stage to give this presentation, a rather large presentation in her industry. She's a subject matter expert. She's telling me that she's scared because she has to hold a piece of paper with all her notes on it. And she knows that it's terrible to read on stage, which I get that. But she needs this piece of paper so she feels secure. So I said, well, then tell the audience that you're excited about this. I said, tell the audience to say something like this. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited to offer you a brand new curriculum. I have it in front of me because I don't want to miss a point. I have some bullets here. I'm going to glance over and make sure I nail everything. And at least you give yourself permission to hold that piece of paper. So if you have to hold something like a teddy bear, something to ground you, then make a point for it. If you think you might forget a section of your seminar or whatever you're speaking about, remember that no one else will know that you skipped something. I may have forgotten to tell you something today that I really wanted to tell you, Ross, but how would you or anyone else know?
That's one of the best things I've ever had said to me that calmed my nerves entirely. And the audience doesn't know what you were about to say.
They don't. And if you really want to say something and you lose your train of thought, just take a water break. Say, everyone, this is a great time for Q&A, or to do a quick Q&A, and also there's nothing wrong. In fact, there's everything right, I believe, about saying to an audience, that was a great question. I know you asked the question. It was so good. I even forgot what it was. Remind me what that was. And then you show you're a human being and people respect you more. When you show you're vulnerable, you're a regular person, when you associate yourself with the audience, as opposed to putting yourself up on stage, so to speak, but you're just one of them, then you are appreciated much more. And that helps grow that trust, that bond of trust. So yeah, if you are scared about speaking publicly, just think about it from their perspective. You're probably okay. Oh, and one last thing about this. Almost in every public situation when you're speaking, there is going to be someone playing solitaire on their phone or sleeping. Don't worry about it. We have we're like this draw to focus on the person who's not paying attention. Like someone is on solitaire and you walk over to them and you ask them the question, like, come on, what do you think? If someone deems that something is more important, then that's okay. Focus your energy on the people who care about what you're talking about. Don't worry about the people who don't care about it. Yeah. And nonetheless, I've had situations when I've given a full hour speech and someone's on their phone the entire time. And then at the end, they come up to me and they say, that was great. I took like 8 pages of notes. They show me on their phone. And I'm thinking, oh, that's really freaking cool. And they ask me a question about one thing they missed or something. So just accept that some people will sleep. Some people will play games, and it's fine. Totally fine. You can't please everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. David, thank you so much for this. This has been wonderful. I've loved having you on here. I'd love to chat more sometime as well. To our listeners, thank you for being here. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. I know certainly I did. But David, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you sharing time with me.
Till next time, everyone, keep swimming. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, give our guests a follow and hit the subscribe button for plenty more content like this. I have a book out covering the types of subjects you've just heard about, available on my website, thisisnotwhatisignedupfor.com, or over on Amazon. While you're at it, sign up for my newsletter to get news about blog posts, e-courses, and new episodes as they're released. If you'd like to get me in to speak to your leadership teams or to coach some of your managers, reach out to me via the website or drop me a line over at LinkedIn. Till next time, keep swimming.